Mass store closures have continued throughout the entire year of 2021 as the retail apocalypse has accelerated the demise of many household brands that have failed the test of time. An equally horrifying fate is affecting U.S. malls, which are getting increasingly emptier and closer to bankruptcy as consumer patterns change. Roaring inflation and supply chain shortages are also compromising the performance of many businesses, given that customers are being left with higher prices and fewer choices. The downfall of these stores has been happening for over a decade, but the health crisis and worsening economic conditions has sped up their decline. These destinations were once beloved by so many, but now are seeing their inventories collapse. The shelves go barer and barer. The rise of e-commerce has played its part, of course, with giants like Amazon taking over the market and providing a safe and easy customer experience, where people can have everything they want with a click of a button. Most brick-and-mortar retailers simply can't compete with the ease of online shopping. Especially now a virus outbreak has been lingering for almost 2 years. It makes sense to stay at home and buy the items you want instead of going all the way to the store just to find depleted shelves. The convenience of purchasing online has led to a major decline in foot traffic at retail stores. Industry experts say that the collapse of brick-and-mortar retailers has become inevitable at this point, mostly because in-store experiences are not as appealing as they used to be for consumers. Even brands that came up with creative ways to entice customers to visit their stores, such as Lego or Toys R Us, which placed customization stations on several locations for people to create their own games, are filing for bankruptcy due to their inability to survive in such a competitive environment. On top of that, the health crisis is undoubtedly contributing to people's fear of enclosed public spaces. Many Americans have been avoiding physical stores since mask mandates and movement restrictions started to be introduced in March 2020. As economic conditions started worsening again, with inflation at a 40-year high while people's purchasing power steadily drops, many of the stores that managed to stay afloat until this point are being pushed to the brink of bankruptcy. In a recent study conducted by Accenture, it was discovered that 64% of consumers are still concerned about their financial stability, and 88% are still dealing with economic damage caused by last year's shutdowns and mass layoffs. Americans' reduced buying power has resulted in a shift in consumer behavior towards discount stores. On the other hand, e-commerce continues to expand and cause many traditional retail stores to go out of business. Online giants have been snatching this customer base almost effortlessly, as consumers themselves see the change as a step towards the future. That's why, for thousands of U.S. stores, this holiday shopping season is gonna be the last. With widespread shortages of supplies, a reduced labor force, and collapsing profits, many retailers are being forced to close their doors for good. Amongst them, Sears and Kmart, two brands that once proudly dominated the U.S. retail landscape and actually emerged from bankruptcy 3 years ago. They're now hanging by a thread once again, and industry executives are betting on the extinction of both brands. The two chains are only a shell of what they used to be at the start of the century. In 2005, the brands merged together to form Sears Holdings. Back then, there were 3,500 stores across the country. Right before filing for bankruptcy at the beginning of the Great Retail Apocalypse of 2017, there were 223 Sears and 202 Kmart stores nationwide. That's an 87% decline in the number of stores. Today, there are only 21 full-line Sears stores left in the U.S., according to the store locator on the Sears website. And if sales are proven to be good enough by the end of the quarter, there will be only 6 Sears stores left in the country. But if earnings disappoint, that will be the end. To me, it always felt like a liquidation. This has been going on for years, said Reshmi Basu, an expert in retail bankruptcies at DebtWire, about the downfall of the chain. It's been in terminal decline for quite some time, highlighted Neil Saunders, managing director and retail analyst at research firm Global Data. Of course, Sears and Kmart are not the only retailers struggling with the shift of consumer patterns towards e-commerce or big box retailers such as Walmart and Target. You've probably heard about the fatal collapse of JCPenney and Neiman Marcus, which filed for bankruptcy right after the onset of the health crisis, while Lord & Taylor went out of business. Other brands such as GameStop, Gap, Disney have started to shut down thousands of stores to financially recover. Many more are still in trouble as the retail apocalypse drags on. Considering that vendors are having major problems supplying much stronger retailers with the inventory they need due to the current supply chain crisis, it's getting exceedingly difficult for troubled retailers to get the products their customers want. We know that suppliers are prioritizing their deliveries. They're delivering to outlets that add more value to brand, explained Craig Portell, lead partner in the global consumer practice of consultant Kearney. And the ongoing labor shortage makes it even more difficult for the struggling chains to attract the workers they need. The war for talent in retail is very real. Right now, they're not only raising hourly wage, but look for other elements to attract workers, college tuitions, benefits, things that troubled retailers will have difficulty matching, added Portell. Supply shortages and lower foot traffic are the main contributors to the new wave of store closures that started this year. Starbucks has been one of the hardest hit by supply shortages, extending from shortages of straws to plastic cups and even oat milk. The company announced 400 store closures to focus on drive-through and curbside pickup options. In the third quarter of 2021, Starbucks profits declined by 21.6%. Similarly, Macy's announced an additional 60 stores shut down starting in January. In 2020, it has closed nearly 125 stores nationwide. In a recent statement, Macy's CEO Jeff Gennette said that the brand is taking the organization through significant structural change to lower costs, to bring teams closer together and reduce duplicative work. In July 2020, Bed Bath & Beyond Inc. announced it would close 200 stores. Now more closures are coming as the net income and net profit were negative for both the second and third quarters of 2021. The same happened to Gap, who said in October 2020 it would close 350 stores. Even after all of those shutdowns, its third quarter performance was extremely worrying. The company posted a net loss of $152 million and said more closures are coming in 2022. Children's retail apparel chain The Children's Place closed 122 stores this year to complete its 300 closure goal in anticipation of its dismal fourth quarter earnings. Likewise, fast fashion retailer H&M shut down 350 stores, while women's clothing retailer Christopher & Banks is still in the process of closing all 400 stores, and the Ascena Retail Group has completed the closure of the remaining 200 Justice stores. The video rental chain Family Video was forced to shut down its final 250 locations this year. The impact of the health crisis, not only in foot traffic but also in the lack of movie releases, pushed us to the end of an era, the company said in a press release. And at least 3,000 more stores could be closed after this holiday season if the volume of sales is not enough to compensate for the losses recorded over the course of the year. Experts say that the total could reach 10,000 stores or more by mid-2022, especially if the economy falls into recession again. Another issue these struggling brands are having to cope with is the rise of retail theft. In California alone, retail theft accounts for $15 billion in losses every year. Recent reports have been describing smash and grab incidents happening all over the state. Over the past 2 weeks, more than $330,000 worth of goods were stolen in 11 different incidents in Los Angeles. In suburban Walnut Creek, approximately 80 people wearing ski masks and carrying crowbars grabbed armfuls of merchandise from a Nordstrom and fled to waiting cars in what local officials called a planned event. And a similar incident occurred at a mall in the nearby city of Hayward, according to the LA Times. Rachel Michelin, president of the California Retailers Association, said in a recent interview that in San Francisco and Oakland alone, businesses lose $3.6 billion to organized retail crime each year. Meanwhile, American malls are dying a slow and painful death. These American cultural touchstones are also disintegrating as part of a retail apocalypse. Companies that stayed in the market for over a century are seeing their consolidated brands fade away as the apocalypse sweeps through the retail industry and leaves thousands of vacant stores and collapsing malls in its wake. According to John M. Clapp, a professor at the University of Connecticut Center for Real Estate, the American mall is facing a death spiral. Once a department store goes vacant, that tends to be contagious because all those middle mall stores, the nail salons, the jewelry stores, they're all depending on the traffic coming from the bigger retail stores, he said. Sadly, about 250 malls across the country are on the brink of bankruptcy and may be gone by the end of 2022. Moody's Analytics says retail vacancy rates are nearing a 7-year high after major chains announced closures of more than 12,000 stores in 2020 and 2021. Moody's projects that almost 135 million square feet of vacant retail space may turn malls into warehouses. However, things are only going to get worse in the sector because, according to UBS, at least 80,000 retail stores are threatened by closure as e-commerce rises and the economy slides. Unfortunately, as consumers have to cope with sharp price hikes, rampant inflation, and an unstable economic and financial scenario, America's retail landscape will never be the same. Every apocalypse marks the end of an era, and our future lies in the unknown.